Well, hello, Scott Foster with Maker37.com, and today I'm going to show you how to carve a crochet hook. You're going to need some tools. You're going to need a knife of some kind. This is a Sloyd knife that has to be sharpened. Here's a pocket knife. If you have a non-locking blade, be super careful. I actually suggest probably you don't use this unless you're familiar with knives. Probably the best thing for you to use if you don't have a sharpening system and you don't use knives a lot is a utility knife that you can get at a big box store. They have a kind where the blade actually breaks off. They're super thin and you don't have to worry about sharpening. Make sure you wear eye protection when you break the blade off. Ask me why I know that. So the tools you'll need are a knife, a small handsaw, preferably with really close teeth. Get a cleaner cut, a pair of secateurs or cutters. These are actually for rosebush trimming. Something to mark with, and these are just some examples of hooks that I made recently for demo. This is a piece of, well, these are both pieces of pear wood that I just cut off of the tree. These are green wood. If you make your hooks out of green wood, you will have to let them dry, so you put them in a paper bag. Give them about 6 weeks, check them periodically, and then you can move on to the sanding. So basically what I'm going to show you how to do is how to go out, trim a branch off of a hardwood tree, and bring it back in, carve the head, carve the top, and then put it away to dry. And you can profile that with going through the grits of sandpaper after it dries. Okay, so let me get these tools out of the way here. And I'm going to put my gloves on because I'm not going to use pear for this. I'm going to use black locust, which I actually also have in the yard. I can't say it's an orchard because I have quite a few. Quite a few fruit trees, but not a lot of them are fruiting. This is black locust and it has some mighty nice thorns on it, but locust is a really good wood. If you're a gardener, it's a nitrogen fixer, just like peas and legumes are, that they use for cover crops. And a black locust post will last in the ground up to 80 to 100 years without any kind of finish on it. A lot of people don't like this tree, but I think this is a super tree. I think this is a great tree to have in your yard, and it's awesome for pollinators. Bees love the flowers, and the flowers are actually edible. So what I'm doing right now is I'm cleaning this up. Let's get that out of there. I want to make sure that I get all the pokies off of here, because these pokies are good. I think that's why people don't like the black locust, because it pokes. So I'm just cleaning this up. What you're looking for is a stick that's as clean and straight as you can get. Then measure off how long you want the hook to be. Today I'm just going to do, I think I'm going to do 6 inches. Just because, actually, you know what? I'm going to do 8 inches because it's going to be easier for me to work with. So eyeball it, mark it off, and let's give it a quick snip. And there we go. So you can use hardwood, you can use softwood. A softwood would be something like pine. If you live in Minnesota or Canada, that's probably going to be most available to you. If you're in Canada, you might actually, depending on where you're at, you might actually have access to maple. And maple is a really good wood to work with. It's forgiving, it's straight, it's clean. It cuts easy. That would be a good wood to start with. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up a bit with my knife. This is not quite ideal in the sense that it has the buds on this bad boy are still breaking, so there's a lot of bumps on the wood. Okay, so I'm going to remove the bark. It's green, so if your knife is sharp, really easy to do, really quick. Just be careful. Always go away from yourself. Always carve away from yourself, unless you're a professional carver. There are times when you can do stop grips to carve towards yourself, but we're not going to talk about that. So right now what I'm doing is I'm cleaning the bark off of this green stick of wood. Let's see how it goes doing it with a pocket knife. I don't want you guys to think that you have to have special tools, because you don't. You got to be careful with a pocket knife, because if you go the wrong way, it'll close on your fingers. So you just got to be careful. And is this sharp? Definitely not as sharp as my Sloyd knife, but it'll do the job. Again, this is black locust that I'm using. Split in the wood there. Okay, so I'm using the pocket knife, and it seems to be working pretty good, so you could do it with this. Honestly, I think you'd be happy with the utility knife that I was talking about. That's what I would suggest you use if you don't have a Sloyd knife, which most people don't. Okay, so we have a clean piece of wood here, and here's just some other examples. This is a piece of pear. This is a little pear guy that I did before I did this video. You can kind of see it there. Let me take that. So at the green stage, you don't really want to do any sanding unless you just do the hard grit, or the low grit rather, sorry. The low grit sandpaper is the one that's got a lot of stuff on it. You know, 400 is probably what I would suggest, or maybe 220. This just gives you an example of kind of the outline of the hook. Hopefully that makes it so you can see it better. But you can actually see the ramp, I think, a little bit better when I do it like that. So you can actually see. So this is basically what I'm going to teach you how to do. You'll carve this if you're using green wood, and then you're going to let it dry in a paper bag, and then you're going to finish it. So you're going to be doing a lot of the work with sandpaper. So any of the work you don't do on the front end, you're doing with sandpaper, the smoothing and the resizing. I'm going to make 2 marks. I'm going to say that is the lip of the hook. And I'm going to say that the ramp starts right there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a saw at a 45. And I'm going to cut down. But I'm only going to go halfway the diameter of whatever wood I'm using. You don't want to go beyond halfway through the stick, or it makes a weak hook. So, first thing I'll do, kind of eyeball a 45. A little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to cover this with marker because this white wood is just not showing up. So I'll put the marker over where I've cut, and I'll kind of show you. That black marker is a cut 45 degrees, like that, halfway through the hook. Then I'm going to take my knife, I'm going to start at the second mark, which is the top of your ramp. And I'm going to take the knife and I'm going to cut down into the groove, and I'm going to take small chunks, small, easy chunks. And you want to get the cut as clean as you can with the knife, because anything that's not clean, you're going to be sanding later. So I start with the ramp and I just take tiny, tiny cuts. And if you don't take tiny cuts and you take big cuts, you might cut the head of your hook off. And then just keep looking at the side to make sure you don't go past. Make sure you don't go past the point where you've cut with the saw. There. Then I'm going to come in for the top, try to clean it out a little bit very gently. This is some super green wood. Okay, so I've cleaned that out. I know you can't see it yet, so let me go ahead and use a black marker to give you a better idea of what this is looking like. So that's a rough cut of the hook head. Okay, the next step is I'm going to, in a symmetrical way, meaning twisting the hook after each cut, I'm going to cut away from me, and I'm going to just start whittling into an angle to cut the head. This pith is really, really big. The pith is the center of the hook. Then I'm going to get some 220 sandpaper and just kind of clean it up a little bit and take a look at it. That's your hook head. And what you're going to do is you're going to take this and you're going to put it in a bag for 6 weeks. Then you're going to take it out, a paper bag. You're going to take it out and you're going to check it periodically. And then when it's dry, then you can start the finishing process, which is basically just sanding. Sanding it to meet the needs of, or your own requirements, or whatever is aesthetically appealing to you. You know, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be straight. It could be, you know, you could have burl on here. You could have, you know, you could pull something small up with the roots still on it, and you know, you could do some pretty cool stuff. But I wanted to keep this simple. Okay, so that's basically a green wood hook in a nutshell. Okay, so this is an example of making a hook from a piece of dry wood. If you can get a dry twig, that would be better because it's already round, but I'm going to have to round this out. And this is dry. Dry wood is much harder to work with. But the positive thing about dry wood is it's not going to move on you when it's drying, whereas the green hooks might, but I think you could actually get some pretty cool effects with that. So basically the whole idea of me doing this is like I want people to experiment, and I want people to be able to make their own stuff and be creative. You know, always keep in mind, and this isn't my quote, I can't remember who said it, but that the master has failed more times than the apprentice has tried. Yeah, I know, cliche, but hey, it's true. It's true. So this is basically round, but not super round. And I'm going to clean, so I've kind of gotten the head round, but I'm going to go ahead and take the edges off the rest of this hook, or the rest of this piece of wood, just so I don't have to feel it in my hands. Always use a knife away from you. Always use a knife away from you, unless you're professional. There are instances where you can do a grip that will allow you to carve towards yourself, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Dry wood cracking. I haven't tried it. I'd like you guys to try it and then get back to me. I think you could actually do this with even with a chopstick. It's really dry right there, and there's a knot, so it's coming out kind of. Okay, so I'm going to go from this end because it seems to be less, there's not any intersecting grain, which tends to tear out when you carve it. Just, you know, find a piece of wood that's close to the size of the gauge that you want. That's the best way to do it, because otherwise you're going to have to take all that wood away. and it's more work for you. Maybe, I think, keep the first couple of hooks simple and get comfortable with it, and then start experimenting from there. Because it would be cool if you could actually get a hook that works for you, give you some confidence. Okay, so basically what I did was I took this down, the top of it down, to make it somewhat round, and then I took the edges off this but left it somewhat square. The creative side I'll leave to you. Okay, so this is going to be just the same as doing the green one, but I just wanted to show an example. I'm going to make 2 marks. I'm going to say my hook mouth is there. I'm going to say my ramp starts here. I'm going to take my saw. I'm going to go down to the 45, halfway through the wood. I actually need a new hand saw. This saw is pretty bad. See, this part of it, I'm making this look easy, but the part that's laborious, well, okay, there's 2 things that you're going to deal with probably. In the beginning, you might get these angles wrong. You might get the ramp length wrong. You might cut a hook head off when you're cleaning out the ramp. But the work is going to be in the sanding and the fine tuning to get the size. And you're going to want to use a crochet hook guide to get the size that you want. Do 1 hook and you'll know why you want to get the wood as close to the size as possible. Okay, so I've sawed halfway through. Piece of wood. This is actually cherry. Just mark it out on there so you can see it. That black denotes the saw mark. I've sawed halfway through it, roughly at 45. Now I'm going to take my Sloyd knife and I'm going to take small little baby chunks in the ramp. And what you're doing is you're ramping down to intersect with that knife cut that you made earlier at the bottom of the hook head. And you do want to try to make this as smooth as possible. I'm going to have to put that saw back in there because what ends up happening is I didn't hold the saw flat. And so it went deeper on the far side of the hook head than it did on the side that was closest to me. Okay. So that's... give you a general idea here again. So that's what we did with the knife. We cut at a 45 with the saw on the top, and the first mark right here, we cut down at a 45. Then we moved back to the second mark. We were on the back of our ramp, and we just slowly took wood until we got down to the end of the saw mark. You don't want to go past the saw mark. If you do, it's not that big a deal. Well, on a smaller hook it might be. It just means more sanding. And now I'm going to carve the top of the head. This is dry wood, so not as easy to work with as green wood, but you'll have a hook that you can work on and use if you can get wood. And if you don't have access to dry wood, what you could do is just go out and cut a bunch off a tree, throw them in a paper bag, and then wait. Well, it just depends on the wood and your environment and everything, but you'll know when the wood's dry. You can tell the difference when you're cutting into it. Then I'll take some 220 sandpaper. Well, I've actually cut the head symmetrically, and I'm not paying too much attention to shape or anything, because I think that's just something that's creative, and that's something that you can do. And this hook is a little bit bigger than what I normally make, but I figured it would be easier to show in the example. So this is basically you shaping the head of the hook, shape the ramp, get everything smooth, tweak it. Remember, you can't put wood back. You can always take more off though. This is the part that's super fun. Actually, it might be. Making your own hooks to use, probably get a ton of enjoyment out of this. So, okay, so you want to get the hook head the size you want to get the shape you want the ramp to look the way you want it to look. Start with 220 sandpaper. Once you get close to the shape of the hook, or the size of the hook, you want to make sure you're gauging so that you're not going too small. Start with 220, which is a low grit. Go to 400, 600, 800, 1000, 1200, 1500, 2000. You don't have to go that high, but I would not skip between grits. So 2, 4, 6, 8, if that works for you, then you're good to go. Okay, I'm going to work on this and I'll come back at you. Okay, I'm back. Took me about 10 minutes to sand the head on this. It will take you longer. I only did it with 220 grit. I didn't go any higher. So this kind of shows you what you can do fairly quickly. I'd say 10 minutes total work time to get this hook out. And you can play with it, and you can shape it, and you can make the handle the color you want, and you could use acrylics or some kind of paint. You could decorate the handle. I mean, you could do some pretty cool things and make some pretty cool gifts for people with these things. Or just make them for yourself. That's always good too. So this is not super smooth because it hasn't been sanded a lot, but just gives you an idea. I mean, within less than half an hour, let's say, you can make yourself a pretty cool crochet hook. This is pretty rustic, but you know, it's cherry wood. It's cool. You made it. Love it. Use it. Thanks for watching Fiberistas. This is Scott Foster with Maker37.com. I appreciate you watching. Have a great day.